If you're excited to start your own business, to share your unique gifts and bring them to the world, and want to know how to do that, I'm going to guess that you probably don't know Jack. Welcome to the Father, Sons, Brothers podcast. I'm Gareth, and I'm excited to be sharing this unique episode with you today, which is a follow on from episode number 43. Episode number 43 was called Your Personal Brand is Not About You, where we unpacked some of the important aspects of understanding your personal brand and why it's so important to get clear on your personal brand if you want to bring your unique message to the world in a way that serves the people that it's resonant with in order to be able to get paid to do that. Today's episode is going to build on that episode. So if you haven't had the chance to check that out, check out episode number 43 to get the context of exactly why a personal brand is important. Today's episode is going to be a slightly shorter episode, and it's going to be a very practical opportunity for you to dive into some of the aspects of understanding who your ideal client is. And I'm excited to be joined today by Alex Marostica. Alex is the CEO of Ignite Your Business, and she works with coaches, speakers, and leaders to help them get clear on their message, to understand who their message is for, and how to get paid to bring their message to the world. Alex, thanks for coming on the show again. It's good to have you here.
It's wonderful to be back here again. It was so much fun the last time, so I'm very happy to be back and can't wait to get a little bit into the meat and potatoes of how this all works.
Awesome. So, this episode, number 44, and the next one, episode number 45, are going to be really practical. So, if you are on this journey of wanting to understand how you can bring your voice to the world, understand who your ideal client is, and get paid to do that, this episode is going to be for you. Grab a pen and piece of paper, find a quiet spot, and use this as an opportunity to practically implement some of the content that we're going to outline for you inside this episode, which is really framed around you getting to understand who your message is for. So, Alex, let's talk about the importance of understanding who your message is for when you're talking about personal brand or creating a business on the internet that supports perhaps speakers, coaches, facilitators, retreat holders, that particular niche. Why is it important to understand who the message is for, and what are some of the questions that we're going to unpack in the episode today?
Brilliant. So, this question of who this is for is really relevant no matter the business you're in. This is fundamental for every kind of business. Um, because ultimately, every business, its goal is to sell to or be of service to people. So if you don't understand the people, you will miss the mark. That every single thing you do is about attracting and engaging the people who would want to use your services or your products. So if you don't get them, why would they come to you? So your starting point is always who am I serving and really understanding them. And it's not just understanding it on a superficial level, especially if you're doing the kind of work that are the people that we typically work with, people in the coaching, the personal development, the speaking space, etc. It's a lot more, you have to have a much deeper level because the kind of relationship you want to build with those people is a deep relationship. You know, the kind of work that a soulpreneur does requires a lot more than just somebody exchanging money for your service or product. We also want them to put time in. We want them to put effort and energy in. We want them to do some really hard personal work and dig deep and get introspective and answer some really hard questions and face some uncomfortable truths. That's a really high cost. And to do that, you're not going to do it if you don't understand someone at a deep level. If you don't take the same effort to understand who your ideal client is, who your audience is at that deep level of who they are, what makes them tick, why they have the challenges they have. And this helps to build a trust for them to say, okay, I might give a little bit more than just my credit card details here. I'm going to open up my heart here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to allow someone to ask me the difficult questions that I've been too afraid to ask. And I'm going to do the work. So to do that, we have to get personal with our audience. And so the starting point is really getting to understand who they are. Now, that is easier said than done. So one of the things that's really good to do is to understand what is the journey you want your ideal client to go on. Understand where they are right now and where it is that they're aspiring to go. And to do this, one of the tools that we can use is understanding the archetype of a particular person or your ideal client. So, an archetype is this is a way of understanding the deeper personality of people based on usually mythological characters that we have seen in history and in literature, etc., and using these as reference points to understand the deeper psychological aspects of a person. And there are certain archetypes that come up time and time and time again within us, and we are all have multiple archetypes within us, and you will speak to certain aspects. So you're not necessarily speaking to the whole person, you're speaking to the aspect of the person who has the need or is experiencing the challenge which you are going to be solving. So to make it simple, I'm going to use an example. So I'd like to use the example from Father, Sons, Brothers. So for
Mm.
our audience, they probably know that Father, Sons, Brothers ideal client avatar is called Jack. And whenever a whenever as Father, Sons, Brothers, you want to create something useful that would be of service for Jack, you need to understand who Jack is. Sometimes it's just an aspect of Jack. So if we look at your most recent launch or promotional event that you've had, you looked at the aspect of Jack that is the people pleaser. So that's
Yeah.
the archetype that you were looking at. You're looking, and you went into detail into what does it mean to be a people pleaser? How has being a people pleaser impacted Jack's life? What challenges has it caused for Jack? And how has this prevented Jack from having the full life that Jack could have? So this
Exactly.
is what you would do. You'd go into your ideal client and find out what is that aspect of them that is the part that needs the healing. And then identify how that is actually playing out and impacting and the ripple effects it's having on their life. Then also you need to think about is what is Jack aspiring to be? If Jack did the work, if Jack could find the courage, if Jack could find the vehicle, the teacher, and the guidance, what, where could Jack be? What could Jack aspire to be? And in the case of the recent launch of Fathers and Brothers, Jack could aspire to be the fuck yes man
Living his fuck yes life.
or living a fuck yes life. Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the aspiration. And this is what is placed as the offer to your ideal client. Now, there are many people in the world who could be a Jack, But who is the Jack that is the Jack that's right for what you have to offer? And we know this because we speak directly to that people pleaser archetype.
Hey, FSB crew, a quick message to say 97% of you who watch or consume this podcast are not subscribed. Subscribing to the show really supports us to be able to grow and reach more people, as well as include and improve the quality and caliber of guests that we have on this show. Our goal is to get this number down to 70%. And so if you have ever received any value from the content and conversations on this podcast, please consider subscribing. It really supports us and the work that we're doing. Now, back to the show. So good. You know, in our first episode, we spoke about we're in the business of solving problems. Everybody that's out there that's buying us a product or a solution is really looking to solve a problem. And for the example that Alex is talking about, Jack has some places in his life where his relationships are starting to feel uncomfortable, where he feels like he's continually not seen. He feels like he's doing everything for everybody else, but it's not feeling like it's lined up. And this comes from my own journey of being a people pleaser and recognizing what I needed to change and to integrate in my own life in order to recognize what was required for me to live my fuck yes life. So, this transformational journey that Alex is talking about, from where your ideal client is now with the problem that they're sitting with to where they are when this problem is solved, is your responsibility to find out. And unless you can understand what this journey is for your client, articulate it to them, and really prove through empathy, through trust building, through the positioning of your particular vehicle. And by vehicle, I mean launch, book, retreat, talk on stage, etc., you're not going to be able to build a business. And so, what Alex is going to unpack now is a couple of questions for you to get clear on who is your Jack, who is your ideal client, what is the problem that they have? What is the impact of this problem? And how does your particular solution position itself in a way to be able to move them through these various stages that goes through this sort of hero's journey of transformation from, in our example, the people pleaser who's continually apologizing and can't understand why his life's a mess, to the man who's in his power that's like, I fucking got this. My relationships are in check. I'm not apologizing for shit. I'm showing up fully, and move them through that process is what these questions are going to help you unpack. So, Alex, what are some of the questions people can use to identify their potential avatar from where they start their journey, and then move them through to the transformation that our Jack, you listening to this, you're our Jack, and in this particular example, you're Jack who wants to start their own business. So, for clarity, and this is going to get a little bit meta, before we jumped onto this call, Alex and I were like, what do we want Jack to experience from this particular transformation? And we spoke about the podcast. Jack is integral to our business. Every time we sit down to create an email, to create a blog post, to create a video or a podcast, we're thinking about Jack, you, our ideal client. And as Alex said, there's different various elements of Jack that we're supporting in our business. And this particular one is about building a business and bringing your message to the world. So, how does Jack, the person listening to this, ask themselves these questions to find out their ideal client and their transformational journey?
Great. So, as I go through the questions, you already touched on what would be the very first question. For many of us, when we find ourselves in this personal development space where we become a coach or a facilitator or a healer or whatever it is that we become, it's usually because we've gone on some journey of our own where we've done our own inner work or inner healing, etc., that has now brought us to this point where the student now feels comfortable to become the teacher. So for many of us, really what we are actually, who we are speaking to is ourselves 5, 10 years ago. And that is a good starting point to understand who your Jack is, or whatever is the name you pick for your particular avatar. And it's great to have a name. You want to personify this person as a real person, that they're not just this theoretical ideal. Make them as real as possible. So as you unpack who Jack is, give them a personality, give them a look, a feel, an address, everything, an age, describe their family, etc. But the core is really about their internal motivations and their internal struggles. So, where were you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, before you became the person you are now? Who were you when you experienced what your ideal client might be experiencing right now? What was your identity at the time? What was the problems you were experiencing at the time? And at the time, what did you aspire to be but did not know how to get there or thought I could never be that? So that would be the first thing I would do. I'd be my starting point. When you have clarity around that, the next thing I would look at is in terms of the problems that you were experiencing at that time, or the challenges, or the obstacles that were stopping you from living your full, complete life, think about what were the behaviors or qualities or personality aspects within yourself that were causing these challenges. Understand what specifically were you doing at the time. So, in the example that we were using now, specifically, how did the people pleasing stop Jack from having his full life? What specifically was he doing? He was not honoring his no when he felt that he didn't want to say yes. He was putting himself second when in order to get other people's approval. So we get really specific about what are the actual behaviors that your ideal client is doing or what you were doing 5, 10 years ago that were creating these problems, challenges, obstacles in your life. And then there's the hard question, because once you've just had now, we're not hard. The hard one is what is the underlying motivator, the underlying fear that is causing this behavior? Why is Jack people pleasing? What is that underlying reason? And understanding there is a fear there. Is it the fear of not being loved? Is it the fear of not being enough? Is it the fear of conflict? Understanding what are all those underlying fears, the motivators, because that's where the work is going to lie. And that's where whatever you're offering is going to ultimately need to address that. And also because oftentimes this is the thing that your ideal client might not consciously be aware of. And you then identify this as something to bring to the fore for them so that then they see that this is the journey I need to take.
I just want to jump in here and say that if you're still listening to this, I'm gathering that this is interesting for you and that you're interested on being on this path. And the people that are the most successful in business are those who take action. And so if you're just sitting here listening to this thinking that it's going to just land in your body somehow, it doesn't work like that. I would really suggest that you've been pausing this, listening to these questions with your journal and a pen, and you're actually taking note of who this ideal avatar is, because this is really where the work is. And the other part that feels a lot more exciting, which is like, what platform should I use? Maybe I'll start a podcast or a blog. I'm telling you now, that'll be the shortcoming and the delay of your success if you don't spend time in this stuff. This is really fundamental, because when you decide to start a podcast or you decide to start a blog or a launch or whatever your vehicle is, if your messaging and languaging is not talking to these particular components of the problem for your person, if you're not talking to the right person, you're going to waste a lot of time, money, and energy speaking to the wrong people, not resonating with them. We spoke in the last episode as well about imposter syndrome, and many people that feel like they're not properly qualified tend to talk a lot about themselves. Jack doesn't give a fuck about me. Jack gives a fuck about Jack and Jack's family. And until you understand that, it's going to be quite difficult for you to get that. So please take the time to work through these questions that Alex is sharing with you if you're really interested in finding out who your ideal client is, the challenge that they have, and how you can help them. Do you have any other questions? Is that it for this?
So yes, that's really the bulk of this is really understanding the internal aspect of your ideal client, and as a result of that, understanding the problem. And so, as a last question, I would add in terms of the problem is when you start unpacking how this plays out problematically in their life, um, and how this challenge appears. Think about how does it appear on a practical level externally? How are they relating with people, etc.? What is going on internally? What's going on? Like it's so. For example, the people pleasing we've already said, like doesn't say no, doesn't own his no, says yes when he doesn't mean it, puts his own need second. That's on an external level that's going on. What is going on an internal level? On an internal level, I'm feeling resentful. Nobody's recognizing this the sacrifice I'm making, maybe being a bit in victim mode, and understanding also how that problem is also happening inside the parts that Jack is not speaking about outwardly, but is going on inside. And oftentimes that's the bigger challenge. So yeah, so make sure you can unpack that because then you can tailor what you want to offer exactly to what Jack needs.
This work that you're doing now, just to let you know, forms the basis of every single piece of content that you create, of every single message that you create, of every single podcast that you create. Whatever your vehicle is all linked to this underlying potential challenge that your ideal avatar has. And so this work is super, super important. And for those of you that are ready to supercharge this process of getting clear on your avatar, we've got a super amazing offer for you. Alex has got very limited space to work one on one for free with a handful of clients who are action takers and ready to get this personal brand piece dialed in. Understanding your avatar is the first piece. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to this episode for something called a personal brand audit. It's a simple form that you're going to create or fill out with all of your details, including what you think your potential idea for your mission or your business is going to be, including if you're not 100% sure of exactly what that is. Alex has got a little bit of space to be able to work with a few people one on one, and she can work with you to go through this process, help you unpack these questions, offer reflection to the work that you've already done in this episode. And if you want to go through that process with her, grab one of the spots that we have available by clicking the link in this particular episode. Alex, thank you for everything that you're doing to help more creators get their voice out into the world, to help it find their particular Jack, and to get paid to do that. And let our Jack, you listening to this podcast, know what he's going to be able to jump into in the next episode with regards to the next step. We've got another episode, a short one like this, with some more journal prompts. What can Jack expect when he jumps into the next episode?
You know they're your ideal client. They need to be matched with the guide who can actually solve their problem. And we'll look at how you do that.
Epic. Thank you for checking out this episode. We look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you want one of those slots, grab the link in the show notes for this, and we'll see you in the next episode. Alex, thank you so much.
Thank you.